Welcome to the Plan Companies podcast. Today we have Jennifer Alexander from the law firm Griffin Alexander, and we're going to talk about the many things going on right now in our society related to COVID-19, etc. Also with us is our Chief Revenue Officer, Dino Uliano. Dino?
Hello. Glad to be here.
Good. And we have Joe Vitorino also, who is our Director of Alliances.
Guys, thanks for having me.
So welcome, Jennifer. We're glad to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So Griffin Alexander, can you tell us a little bit about the firm, maybe some of your practice areas, some of the things you do there?
Sure. Happy to do that. The law firm, again, is Griffin Alexander PC. I am one of the shareholders of the firm, and our practice areas mostly focus on apartment communities, landlord-tenant law, as well as community association law. And with both of those areas, it's helping with landlord-tenant, obviously handling landlord-tenant relations, helping them with their policies, helping draft leases, helping assist with evictions, and so forth. And on the community association side, we help with general counsel work as well as construction defect litigation. And with the general counsel work, we focus on helping boards run their meetings, helping with contracts, but most importantly right now during COVID-19, we are helping with policies and following procedures that are being outlined from the government for both our landlord-tenant clients and our boards.
Wow, that's very impressive right off the bat, I want to say, because we definitely work in the same circles. You know, if I can just, off of that, planned, the multifamily community is a big client of ours. So a little bit for those who don't know Planned and who we are. We've been around for over 120 years now. We do janitorial, maintenance, front desk, and security. Those are our divisions under Planned Building Services, Planned Security Services, and Planned Lifestyle Services. We, like Jennifer said, the multifamily is a big part of our world. We also do HOA and we do commercial. So I was looking forward to today because I'm sure there's some legalities and some questions that our folks have, as well as perhaps some questions you're getting at your firm that we can help each other with. So I'm looking forward to diving into that. And Nick, sorry I hijacked for a second there.
No, this is
just in case someone doesn't know who Planned is, right?
Yeah.
We got to remind everybody what we do.
Yeah, and Planned does have clients all the way from Massachusetts down to the Carolinas. Jennifer, what about your firm? What geographic area do you serve?
Our practice areas focus in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania.
Okay. Jennifer, so tons of questions. This is a very confusing time for a lot of people. Do you know, like right now, we're in early June 2020, and what amenity areas are property owners or managers allowed to open right now?
Sure. It's fascinating because every day it changes, right? Every day there's a new executive order coming down and how to interpret that. So right now, what amenities that can be open are very limited. And I know, again, everybody is anxious to have more open, but right now it would be tennis courts, and it's only requiring single play, and there's lots and lots of restrictions. I'm sure we'll talk about that. And now there is limited open seating that's being permitted, again, with lots of restrictions. Other than that, there are not other areas that can be open. And again, I know people are very anxious to have those amenities opened, but it is limited to tennis courts. We can also argue and stretch it to the pickleball, and very limited outdoor seating.
So no pools?
No pools.
So yeah, to piggyback on what Jennifer's saying there, and so our front desk folks, our security folks are dealing with a lot of what she's saying. People are taking it upon themselves to declare their amenity open on their own, especially with the weather that's coming. So having the right staff, communicating with the residents, making sure that they know, by no means have we opened our amenities yet. That includes outdoor barbecuing. That includes everything other than what Jennifer mentioned, because we are finding as we're doing our rounds, even if areas that were taped off, people are cutting open the tape, helping themselves to the barbecue areas, self-declaring amenity spaces open, or saying, oh, we thought that we heard this space was open, or things like that. So for sure, until it's passed by all the governors in the states that we're talking about, that it's open, and then communication from your boards or from the resident managers to the residents. Because even though some states may open up areas, doesn't necessarily mean that a building has to. Is that true, Jennifer? Can they keep an amenity closed even if the state declares it open?
Right, absolutely. And I would love to touch on that more. Is just because we're having the executive orders, particularly right now, it's 147 and 148 that have given the go-ahead to open these areas, again, with very limited restrictions and requirements on associations or on multiple, multifamily dwellings. It is not a requirement that you have to open. And there are a lot of things that we have to discuss about that. Like you're saying, there is safety issues, there is enforcement issues, and I know we'll go into that here. And so just because you have the right to open it doesn't necessarily mean for that community or that building, it's the right thing to do.
Agreed. And perhaps we will be touching on it soon, Nick, so I don't want to steal any thunder, but there are, I've talked to other vendors. An example, the pool people. You mentioned pools. Even if they do open their pools, it is not recommended or should not even be considered to have your lifeguard act as a regular guard. Their focus, the lifeguard's focus, should solely be on the pool and who's in there and engaging. This doesn't mean they're checking passes of people coming into the pool area. This doesn't mean they're enforcing 6 feet apart policies out on the deck. Right. Lifeguards should not be performing those functions. And that's when a company like Plan, extra staff is definitely going to be needed. And some of these associations may not be able to afford that. Mm-hmm. So residents don't understand that. They want to take it upon themselves. The governor said the pool's open. Watch the beeline for the pool that afternoon just to find out that the building's like, no, we don't have the CDC guidelines in place to be able to open the pool yet. So I do see there's going to be some friction there when these.
I completely agree. And even though the governor may then say pools can be open, again, the restrictions in place may make it very difficult for any community to do so, or again, be able to enforce. And will they even be able to get lifeguards? I've been hearing a lot of pool companies are already saying they're not going to be able to get lifeguards. Mm-hmm. We have to go back and think of the practical part of this. Mm-hmm. Who are lifeguards mostly? They're kids.
Young kids.
Young adults.
Yeah.
And so are they going to have be permitted to go out there and do it? And do they actually have the ability then to perform those functions as they normally would? So I've been hearing a lot from the pool companies that they're saying, we're just not going to be able to even get lifeguards.
Yeah.
And the second thing, if I just, you have to get those pools inspected by the municipalities, and you're going to have a backlog on that as well. So
wow, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So speaking of that, are the courts open for business at this time? Are they,
Sure. The courts are open in limited capacity, mostly virtually. You can't go in. There's obviously the actual physical building is not open. So for my landlord-tenant side, evictions obviously are on hold right now based upon the governor's orders of not being able to evict anybody until the 60 days past the state of emergency has been lifted. Oh. A lot of it is being done Zoom or virtually to at least have other matters within the courts to still proceed. We're being told that courts will be opening up after June 15th. But again, it remains to be seen in what type of capacity and how they're going to enforce social distancing with the courts.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That must make things a little more difficult for you and for your firm.
It's definitely a learning exercise. We've had some Zoom, meetings with the courts, and it's definitely a new way of going to court.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. Now, I guess along with are the courts open? Are the municipalities sending out inspectors to inspect the pools, or do you know?
Right. So as far as I know right now, right, they're not.
They're not.
They're not having officers come out or anybody inspecting pools, especially now because pools still aren't open.
Mm-hmm.
Or permitted to be open.
Right. Well, I didn't know if they'd be able to come out before they were open. So there'll be a big glut when they do open them, right? Yeah.
A backlog, right? Just like the law firms and the courts and the cases and all that, it's going to be piled up when all this opens. Wow. Interesting.
Okay. So now, any of the amenity areas that are open or opening soon, what regulations do the property managers have to implement?
Oh, it's a lot for them. And this is where I think enforcement or additional personnel is important, where planned companies comes in. You are having requirements of social distancing. If you can actually mark out 6 feet apart, they want you to try to do that. You're being required to make sure you are limiting the capacity of individuals there. Right now, the number is 10 in these outdoor areas. You have to make sure you are routinely cleaning the area. It is on the association or the building to be doing that. You have to, what I'm recommending to clients is that if you're going to allow these areas to be open, that you have people bring their own furniture and then bring it back, to help reduce some of that. So that's just some of the requirements. And, I'm being asked also, like, do we have to provide hand sanitizer and cleaning materials so actual individuals can clean? The answer is yes, you do. And it's that enforcement part, I think, that'll be very hard, that if you can't get these individuals to make sure they are social distancing and limiting the number, obviously that's a concern and a risk factor on our clients.
That is exactly what I was going to ask you. I mean, while you were saying, here we are, let's just call it for the sake of a better word, the enforcers of those policies that you're talking about. And, we are going to be the one confronting someone at the pool who's not 6 feet apart. My question is, and this happens to us a lot, when people disregard those rules, because a lot of it is building rules and some of it are state laws that you're talking about that people will have to follow. Could it end up with an arrest, or would it simply be a building violation where they may get a fine from the building? How do you see that playing out?
So what I am suggesting and implementing at my communities is, this is really on the community association side, is we're implementing fines. We have the right to do that under the governing documents. And we're talking about a significant fine. I'm not talking about $25. I'm saying $250, $500.
Wow.
In addition, I'm then indicating that they have to leave. They're not permitted to use those amenity areas. And finally, what I'm also then in the letters that I'm sending to the community is, if you cannot comply with our requirements that we are being mandated to follow by the governor's executive orders, we will shut the amenity areas down. So we are looking to you to comply and do your part.
Or else.
Or else.
Yeah.
And then people start self-policing. That's why I like that, because now it's going to affect everyone else from using those amenities too. So those few bad apples will affect everybody. So I like that. That's a great idea. Yeah, we'll shut it down. That's what they're saying here all the time in New Jersey. I sit in New Jersey, where they're saying, if you don't obey by the beach rules that we put in place, we'll just close them again. If you don't stay 6 feet apart on the boardwalk, we'll close it again. So I see people when I'm down at the shore, like self-policing, like, hey, back off, get away. Right. We want to come to the beach. So that's good. I like
Everybody has to do their part.
That's right.
Everybody has to do their part.
Yeah. Now, part of these regulations, are there any specific cleaning protocols, like every 2 hours you have to clean, or anything that is defined?
The language they're using is routine. So routine cleaning. And so I've been asked the question, is it every hour? Is it every 2 hours?
Mm-hmm.
It's not specified that way. So we're talking about routine. I would want to focus on how often that area is being used. Obviously, I would want to have it cleaned at least 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. The more that you can show that you're doing routine cleaning and following the guidelines, the better, obviously, you're in compliance and you reduce risk and liability of any claims being filed against you.
Mm.
Yeah, and Nick, we're keeping an eye on CDC guidelines on that too, with touch points. They came out early on with required touch point cleaning suggestions, I should say, not required. How often you should clean elevator buttons, as an example. How often, things like that. So we put together a program for our clients with our recommendations, and people can reach out to us for those guidelines. For reopening, and we have a ton, as you know, on our COVID-19 page of our website that people can see what CDC is recommending around cleaning. Perhaps a little different conversation than when we're having about required. So there's recommended and required. And I like what Jennifer said earlier, that she's recommending to her clients to do X, Y, and Z, because that's all we could do, right, as vendors, is make a suggestion and hope they follow it. And then it's going to be up to them to end in litigation if they don't do things the right way. So we can only lead them to the water, right? That's right. What we said.
So what about restrooms in some of these amenity areas? Are most communities required to offer a restroom, or can they close it if they feel that it's just too much to they have to clean too often, or right, too much to handle, I guess?
Yeah, great question. The executive order talks about restrooms. It doesn't say that they have to be closed down, but it does talk about the requirement to limit the capacity, again, making sure they are routinely cleaned. And so I have some communities that are saying, we're going to close those areas right now because we don't want to have to be concerned about it, and making sure we're following those guidelines, because it is another whole level of cleaning, right? Versus cleaning an outdoor area. So many of them have decided to close those down for now. And it's not that much of a concern yet, because we are only talking about outdoor seating that's being permitted, and it also only requires single seats in this outdoor seating area. So I think the question more will be of concern if and when the pools can open this year, do you keep your restrooms open too?
Yeah, we were talking to a pool company who's on our town halls on Tuesday, and Ben from American Pools said, yeah, you could choose to keep the bathrooms closed, but if you do that, just realize that what's going to become your bathroom is your pool. Right? So there's something to take into consideration if you decide not to open the restroom area. And I think the pools, when they open, there are guidelines, bathroom guidelines that are already out there by the CDC, the recommended guidelines for cleaning the pool bathrooms that Ben shared with us. So is that true, Joe?
Yeah, for example, I speak with Ben a lot from American Pool, and one of the things with common areas surrounding the pool in terms of cleaning is, again, the CDC recommends daily cleaning for restrooms and high touch surfaces, and then there's some other guidelines as well around that. But for the most part, all those common areas, they recommend routine as often as possible, really, just to make sure we cut down on the spread.
So ultimately, these are going to be big financial decisions by these buildings and boards and communities, because they're going to have extra cleaning staff. They're going to have extra security staff. They're going to have extra things on hand they didn't have before, hand sanitizer. So, for the average resident, they don't realize how much more expense is going to go, especially in the areas that we service, and certainly you, Jennifer. These pools are only open for 3 months. Or so. So is it worth it when we're already Memorial Day is already gone, it'll be 4th of July before you know it. So what some buildings are saying, if they lift this order for pools on July 15th, is it worth all this expense for a month and a half left of pools? This season goes so quickly in our markets. And some are saying it's just not worth it. So
well, I think that's important, as I agree, because in addition, there's a concern if we're going to receive maintenance fees or rent timely. So we have that concern. You have the concern again, if you're going to be able to, even if you can open the pools, actually get individuals to lifeguard, and if the pool companies can actually get those pools up and running, and if the municipalities can also do their inspections. So, there's a lot of factors.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Are you seeing, what are especially rental communities doing with amenity fees these days, or what are you seeing anyway?
It really goes across the board. I have some who are providing some type of discount or an abatement, I would say, and I have others who are not. And that's really a business decision if they decide not to. It's not being ordered by the governor or the legislature. So I don't see that it's necessary to actually provide an abatement, just like I don't feel it's necessary to provide a reduction in maintenance fees, because there are, obviously, as we've indicated, other reasons, or that this money is going to need to be spent somewhere else or helping to maintain cleaning. But again, those are business decisions on the building side, and how they want to handle it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I've been watching the TVs like everyone else here, and hear the governors talking, and I almost felt at one point there was almost like, don't worry about not paying your rents, and I think it was kind of a mixed message, because some of the legal people I spoke to said, well, that's not true. If there's something COVID related that's preventing you from your income, then you're not allowed to do things legally. But if you still have your job and you're still working from home, you still have to pay your rent. Right. Is that true? Is that what I'm...
Right. So in the beginning, I think there were some mixed messages that rent was being forgiven.
Right.
No. Okay. The governor has, asked buildings to work with residents and trying to have them work out payment plans if they are impacted by COVID. And they are doing that. But, those who there are always a few who ruin it for everybody else, who are saying, well, I just don't have to pay. They don't have to. They can't evict me. I'm working from home. I'm making my full salary. I'm just not going to pay until they actually can do something to me.
Right.
Well, those individuals soon enough will have a rude awakening when courts do reopen and we're in court with them.
Right.
And, I don't think then there will be a lot of, I don't want to say, the fees are all going to be due. And there may not be such a willing to work out payment plans then. We'll have to see. But anybody who said, listen, I've had a hardship and I need time and can we work something out? We've been working them out with them. My clients have been wonderful about that. And, it's a joint effort. But the idea that you don't have to pay at all.
Yeah. Not true, right?
You always have to pay.
People will find a way to try to manipulate the system or try to figure a way around something, unfortunately. So what are you going to do? Yeah. Nick, what do you have?
So we have another question here. Is like an HOA or a community, are they at risk if someone contracts COVID-19 and argues they contracted it at one of my amenity areas?
Mm-hmm. So the risk there, obviously, it's very hard to prove where you would have unfortunately, gotten COVID-19. But so there is risk that they may try to file a claim against an association. So that's where I go back to when we talked about complying with these orders, complying with the requirements in these areas of social distancing, cleaning, enforcement, monitoring, all of those items. And that helps to reduce those claims. That you can say, hold on a minute, I did everything I was supposed to do. I complied. If it did get to the point where people weren't complying, I shut it down. So that's one of the defenses that I'm really expressing to my clients is make sure you follow this. Post your signs, send letters to the community, let them know what is expected of them and what we are doing for those areas. Have the hand sanitizer out. Keep a log of when your vendor is coming out and doing the cleanings and routinely, and show the type of materials that you were using to help defend one of those claims.
You know, and for us, what we're seeing is some of the folks who were doing these functions in-house, say cleaning or front desk or security, are deciding to outsource to a company like ours simply because of the liability involved. If they take on this liability themselves, then they may have to look at their training programs and make sure that they're following OSHA and CDC guidelines. They may have to provide their own in-house staff and provide the PPE that's needed, versus if you outsource through a contractor and we are responsible for the PPE. A lot of folks now who thought, hey, we could do this and tried it themselves are now saying, well, just from a legal standpoint, we can absolve ourselves of all of this if we just call this company and say, hey, you're responsible. And I would imagine that in a building, that if there was a cleaning issue, to your question, Nick, that a lot of the liability would fall on the contractor, meaning us, plant companies, if someone could prove that they got sick because of improper cleaning or improper PPE of the staff. So I'm sure there are a lot of people in your world right now, Jennifer, considering these things when they're adding staff, or even with the staff they have in their buildings right now.
Right. Especially on the community association side, I see them outsourcing it more to make sure that the protocols are being followed, because they know that they can't. Mm-hmm. At some level, for some of the communities, it's just better to have that third-party vendor handle it, like planned companies, to do the work.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Are you seeing any of your communities ask for waivers to be signed before using the amenity spaces?
It is something that we are recommending that they do sign them. Is it going to give 100% protection of anybody filing, from prohibiting them from filing a claim? No, but it does, again, provide a level of knowledge to these residents that, listen, you are doing this on your own with your own risk. And by signing this waiver, you understand that.
That's concerning for us too. I mean, we're getting some interesting requests now of things that we don't do and we're not experts at. I'll give you an example. Taking temperatures. This is something that, we'll assist if we have to. We've already said no 3 or 4 times, unless it's an existing client. And then we even then would get a hold harmless because our people are not professional doctors or nurses, or are not trained on taking temperature. So some buildings, and I understand, want to have layers of protection for themselves. But with that happening, we need to be careful that that's not putting us at risk. So we will follow policy that they implement to a degree, unless it steps outside of our scope of work, in which we'll suggest that they hire somebody else who's a professional at what they want to do, or sign this hold harmless that says, if our person did not take the temperature right today, and whatever happened to that, we're not responsible for it. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting times with everybody.
Yeah, the temperature taking is definitely one of the more complicated recommendations, mm-hmm. And which is hard to follow. I can totally appreciate that.
Can a community bar access to somebody if they refuse to have their temperature taken?
Well, I'm not having any of my communities really right now pushing that with the temperature taking. I know on a business level, there may be some businesses who are trying to implement that when they come into their office or place of employment to work. Most of the guidelines that we are recommending more, again, are really about cleaning and monitoring that cleaning and social distancing.
Yeah, Nick, we're seeing it in the commercial areas. And I think I heard something on the news that the gyms are going to require it when they open. I think perhaps barbershops and as Jennifer was describing, business folks can say, you can't come into my shop unless we can prove that you don't have a temperature. I think they're going to be allowed to do that. And where we're seeing it in the commercial space, yeah, you can come into this multi-tenant commercial building where you can infect everybody after we screen your temperature. That's where we're being asked, by the way. It hasn't been in the residential areas.
Okay. Okay, great. Jennifer, thank you so much. How can our listeners find out more information or get a hold of you to ask maybe further questions?
Sure. My phone number is 973-366-1188, or they can email me at jalexander@lawgapc.com, and just check us out on the web at Griffin Alexander.
Wonderful. Okay, Jennifer, thank you very much.